A ketogenic diet is not the best diet in the world. It's not the best diet for everybody, and it's not the best diet for every context. So a ketogenic diet is a tool. A ketogenic diet gets you into ketosis through carbohydrate restriction. So when you restrict carbohydrates, you'll be burning fatty acids for energy. Your body can break down those fatty acids into ketones, which can fuel most of the brain. The heart runs really efficiently off ketones, and most of your organs and body can run off of ketones and oxidizing fatty acids. So that's a ketogenic diet. There's a lot of benefits to it, but just because a ketogenic diet can bring benefits in certain ways doesn't mean that it should be applied across the board for everybody. Now, here are some contexts in which a ketogenic diet would not be the best diet. One context would be somebody who's doing a lot of explosive training. Now, I know a lot of people will take offense to this because there have been studies done on gymnasts, on other explosive athletes who saw no performance drop after an adaptation period on a ketogenic diet. But people like MMA fighters, you do not want to put an MMA fighter in a cage to fight in ketosis. This individual is going to need more glucose. So perhaps training in a very low carbohydrate state for an extended period of time, not during a training camp where you're ramping up for a fight. Training in a low carbohydrate state kind of between fights during an off-season situation could probably bring a lot of benefits. And using a ketogenic diet when you're not in a training camp and when you're not having to put out so much anaerobic and aerobic intense, you're not having such an intense training regime with aerobic and anaerobic activity, a ketogenic diet could be really beneficial. They're taking loads of blows to the head. I mean, NFL players in the off-season, stuff like this, it could be great. But while you're training with a high volume and using a lot of glucose with explosive movements and doing a lot of aerobic training as well, like most athletes are doing, right? Like most MMA fighters and most NFL athletes are doing, it's probably not the best idea to use a ketogenic diet. Now, baseball, probably a little bit different. There are explosive movements and you're sprinting, but this gives you time to refill your glycogen, right? So baseball might be a little bit different. Baseball players might be able to use a ketogenic diet in that context a little more effectively than other athletes. But across the board, I would say that most athletes, especially if you're in the middle of your season, if you're a professional athlete, you don't want to use a ketogenic diet or induce a ketogenic diet suddenly unless you're in the off season. In the off season, great idea. I think it's a fantastic thing to train the body to use fatty acids effectively, so then you can also use carbohydrates effectively as well. But for a lot of these individuals, it's not a good idea. Another context in which a ketogenic diet is not going to be beneficial is there's just some people who don't like high-fat foods. Some people do really, really well with carbohydrates. Now, people on a ketogenic diet who have found keto really effective for fat loss tend to forget that a lot of people can do very well with a higher carbohydrate diet. Any macro fed in excess will bring detriment to the human body. Fat in excess causes insulin resistance. You can look at any of the diabetes research, any of the insulin resistance research, and high-fat meals and a high-fat diet does induce insulin resistance. Now, this is physiological insulin resistance in the tissues, right? Using fatty acids instead of glucose when you can in the tissues in the presence of a high-fat diet or the presence of carbohydrate restriction is a very intelligent thing that the body does. Now, in overfeeding carbohydrates, we get hepatic insulin resistance, meaning the liver becomes insulin resistant. Very, very different. Very different downstream physiological effects. So, anyways, some people do well on high carbohydrate diets. Some people are able to moderate their intake of carbohydrate, their intake of fats while they're on a higher carb diet, because high carb plus high fat, overfeeding on both of those macros, of course results in insulin resistance and inflammation and fat gain. Now, some people who greatly benefit from a ketogenic diet tend to be people who need to lose body fat, diabetics, people who are not doing an intense training regime that includes lots of aerobic and anaerobic activity. Also, people who are just doing like heavy lifting. You know, you go to the gym 3 times a week, do some powerlifting movements where you're not depleting glycogen more than like 40%. So you can refill that glycogen rather easily, regardless of what diet you're on. Your body can refill glycogen stores, right? They've done studies on gymnasts, high-level gymnasts who were keto adapted, who adapted to a ketogenic diet, and they didn't lose any strength or power. They're still able to do the same movements with the same efficiency. So when I said earlier that explosive athletes, especially during their on-season, probably don't want to use a ketogenic diet, that's because a lot of these athletes need aerobic and anaerobic activity simultaneously, right? I mean, it's like, you're doing the equivalent of hill sprints while boxing, throwing leg kicks, getting punched in the head, all this stuff at the same time. That is a high demand. You want both energy sources readily available to tap into at all times. Now, a strict ketogenic diet, a high-fat diet, does create peripheral insulin resistance, meaning the muscle tissues will not want to take up glycogen. This is a good thing in the context of ketosis, when you want to use those fatty acid droplets in the muscle tissue and oxidize fats. So, it's all about context. There's no one diet that's perfect across the board for everybody. Your diet is not the way, the truth, and the light. Your diet is a tool to help you live. So let's not forget that. We have to keep these things in perspective. Don't let the diet become some idol or become some lens through which you experience reality, right? Yes, when we come upon something new that's so strong and powerful, it can be really easy to fall into this trap of, well, everybody needs to do this. If everyone would just do this, then the world would be better. But it's all about context. So, ketogenic diet. Let's keep it in context. For some people, it can be fantastic. In other contexts, not such a good idea. For diabetes, for fat loss, for epileptics, and it seems to be for certain, as an adjunct therapy for certain cancers. A ketogenic diet seems to be a great strategy. Also, just for reducing inflammation, increasing mitochondrial density, for cognitive performance, for people who've had traumatic brain injuries, a ketogenic diet looks amazing. But let's not make the mistake of thinking that everybody needs to do keto to be healthy, that it is the optimal state under all conditions across the board. There's no diet that is optimal under all conditions across the board for everybody. There's no way of working out or moving your body that is optimal across the board for everybody all the time. You know? There's no one type of music that's best for everybody all the time. Let's keep it in perspective. Let's not turn the diet into an idol. And let's use a ketogenic diet as a tool and realize that every tool has its function and its context. Alright, so you can find more context on a ketogenic diet at primaledgehealth.com. Also, check out my wife's cookbook, the Ketogenic Edge Cookbook, a training manual for low carbohydrate, ketogenic, and paleo cuisine. Yeah, I had to throw the paleo word in there. Gotta hit the marketing terms, I guess. But it's a fantastic resource for anybody starting out a ketogenic diet and for people who've been doing it long term already. We call it a training manual because it's more than just, we didn't make a list of recipes. We actually set out there to make a legitimate training manual to help you master your keto kitchen, to actually become proficient at creating nutrient-dense, well-rounded ketogenic meals based around proteins, fats, and vegetables. Simple ingredients, nothing crazy that you have to go to the edges of Mordor to find. No artificial sweeteners, not a bunch of nonsense recipes, just nutrient-dense whole foods recipes. All the macros are on the recipes, and all those macros are fat loss friendly. Because we know that the context of a ketogenic diet determines the fat content of your meals. And most people are doing a ketogenic diet for fat loss and don't need astronomical amounts of fats. So we teach you how to adjust the recipes, and we made sure that all of them have fat loss friendly macros. So you can find that at primaledgehealth.com. If you want coaching, you hit us up at the coaching section. And I'm going to enjoy the rest of my day and go get some work done. I wish I could do a time lapse of these clouds right now because it's Absolutely gorgeous. But get outside, go breathe some fresh air, go enjoy life, get off of social media, and go do something real, all right? Get off of the social media crap and get into life. You can find more at primaledgehealth.com. Bye.